Hello, this is Valerie Moore from the Frederian Gazette. Thank you for joining us this Wednesday. We hope you're enjoying the first hint of spring as we reenact the controversial book, Say I Slew Them Not, written by Kingsley, edited by Alexander Phillips, and narrated by Pepper Holloway. Content warnings for this episode include reference to a bombing and mass death.
This program has been sponsored by Mackenzie's Dot-O-Matic, the do-it-all cleaning master. Whether you need to dust a cobweb, sweep broken glasses away, or remove that nasty stain, the Dot-O-Matic can do it all, and just for $59.99. For best results, pick up a bottle of Stain Be Gone today!
We now pass the mic to Pepper Holloway, who will be reading
Episode 6. Prosecution experiences a flurry of death threats amidst an increased number of demon sightings.
Entry from Alexander's Journal, April 4th, 1875. I went to the Rouge Pheasant's bar to get a drink and found Max reading an article about the Tom and Jerro's latest discovery regarding this mysterious force they discovered. I briefly thought about Michael, trapped in their country losing fear and paranoia. I forced myself to ask Max a passing question about the article, and he put the paper away while saying they found 4 versions of whatever it is they're studying. He immediately asked how I was doing, and I knew he had been purposely waiting for me. I told him Quentin hasn't threatened to pull the column or end the broadcasts, despite the increased bomb threats, so all was well. I didn't tell him Mom wasted money on an international call to let me know she's sending money so I can hire a bodyguard. She ignored my assurances that I'm fine, and that the worst I get are loud and obnoxious protesters directly outside my window at all hours of the night. I have a bet going on with Dolores that they'll grow tired within the month and leave. Yes, I am now making bets with the deer head in my hotel room. It's why I'm partially glad Max was in the bar. I need someone who can actually hold a conversation. I asked Max again when I was going to be allowed to interview Kingsley. At this point, I'm just publishing his bullshit for nothing in return because the defense is worried I'm going to hurt him or intimidate him or some other ridiculous excuse. Max looked at me in astonishment, scotch dripping from his furry snout. Did no one tell you about the bombing? I almost scoffed, but caught myself in time. Of course I knew. The prosecution's offices were bombed yesterday. Minimum casualties, although the police are still shifting through the rubble. The trial has been postponed for 3 weeks until security can be increased. The prosecution is spending the night in the basement of the courthouse with armed guards posted at every door, but the ugly rumors are saying that's not enough. 3 clerks and 2 lawyers have already quit. I'm sure more will be gone by tomorrow morning. They've also moved Kingsley from house arrest to Charlie prison for his own protection. Max promised to see what he could do, but it's clear it won't amount to much. He asked me how the column was doing, and I told him the truth. That Kingsley's work so far is nothing more than a melodramatic propaganda piece meant to immortalize his cousin and make himself look like a naive child forced into the arms of the ILA. That my own take on the handling of the trial has gotten at least one Hevian chamber member to threaten to revoke my press privileges and deport me. That the prosecution is furious with me for, quote, painting over Kingsley's crimes. That Christine and Stam are most definitely receiving death threats as well, not that they'll ever tell me. That I want to interview other people to combat Kingsley's bullshit with their own perspectives, but of all his immediate associates, only 7 or 8 are still living, and only 3 are within interviewing range. There's that spineless bastard Sebastian Wallace, who refuses to speak to anyone while his own trial is ongoing, which doesn't surprise Max at all, and the Galloways, Kingsley's greatest rivals. Cathal Galloway, who is now president of Kilbrogher, won't comment on the trial at all, and his mother, Caroline, pointedly told me to go fuck myself. I almost wish Christine was here, since she and Caroline served in the Hevian resistance together. Oisin and Thomas/Cynthia are enjoying asylum on one of the Montparnasse Islands, and are using all their resources and blackmail material to fight extradition. Devon has already refused to testify for either side, so I doubt he would let me interview him. And I tell Max, but what upsets me the most is that the Hevians really used piercing rounds during the May 11th demonstration. Of course that stumps him. No one remembers the May 11th demonstration because it doesn't matter to anyone except 15-year-old Kingsley Montevello and the dead. Kingsley was right. Officially, Hevian police officers are not allowed to use piercing rounds except during the most extreme of disturbances. I checked their handbook. It specifically states that a rally does not qualify as an extreme disturbance, but because someone complained that a gang of a cartel had gathered near the weekly market, the Hevians brought piercing rounds, and because they brought piercing rounds, Kingsley watched an cartel die. Isn't it a maddening thought? If the Hevians had followed their own protocol, maybe, just maybe, Kingsley wouldn't have joined the ILA and all this could have been avoided. A flimsy conclusion, according to Matz, and it is. If that was the only incident, but it's not. It's not one decision to murder a crowd of poor and desperate Ikatel. It's the decision to use a war to wipe out an entire generation of Ikatel, so it'll be easier to retain control over a rebellious territory that is always on the cusp of liberation. It's the decision to wear another being's skin on your feet, even though you know it came from a poor prisoner murdered in their own cell, or on the way to the jailhouse, or shot in cold blood because they dared to grab an orange while fleeing. All make an unforgivable chain that leads straight to Kingsley, to the ILA, to this trial. Except that isn't even the full truth, because Kingsley could have picked a million different choices instead of election stealing and a world war, but he didn't. There are no horrors committed by the Hevians that can justify what Kingsley did during the war. Maybe that's why he hides behind the dead. In the 3 chapters I've read so far, 15-year-old Kingsley is missing. I expected Kingsley to center himself, painting himself as a definitive Ikatel hero from the beginning. Instead, he often blends into the background, his friends taking center stage, tying his fate to the martyrs of Siegfried's day, so hanging him will feel like murdering Ikatel's most renowned heroes all over again. I suppose it's easier to use the love of his friends to save his life than trying to generate any goodwill for himself. A sympathetic reader would argue that he's unable to connect to his teen self anymore because of his own trauma. The few emotions that do pop through are all he can muster, or that they come at too high of a cost to dig any deeper. The more likely read is that Kingsley wasn't actually at the events he's narrating, and he's awkwardly trying to shove himself in without raising too many eyebrows from those who know the various myths swirling around Siegfried and the others, and without baiting Devon to testify. Or maybe he wants to bait Devon, believing Devon will choose their long-dead friendship and comradeship over justice. I wish I could talk to Devon. He's the only surviving ILA member from Siegfried's reign, and he's the only one who would know if Kingsley is lying or not. I can't imagine the ILA taking an untested 15-year-old Ikatel on an important mission like bombing the Copper Line. Well, not the archives, as Kingsley claimed. That's a lie, because Siegfried's map was wrong, but we won't get into that right now. At the most, he would have been a lookout, not responsible for laying the wires and being included in the interpersonal drama. He had just joined. It doesn't make sense unless he's embellishing his own involvement in order to ensconce himself within Siegfried's inner circle so he can justify his later decisions. It's clear he wants to argue that he's continuing Siegfried's noble fight, and all his decisions were made either to avenge his fallen comrades or to win the victory that was within Siegfried's grasp. Wonder how he'll argue that Siegfried would have also made a deal with demons. Demons, who are now openly in Berkassa. That's why Max was waiting for me in the bar. He doesn't know the full story, but I'm sure Mustafa warned him that I have a history with both Kingsley and Rezin, and asked him to keep an eye on me. Max warned me the Cross-Knit Church offered to send the Ajakanai, their unholy assassins, to Berkassa, just in case he tries to rescue Kingsley. It's ridiculous. Rezin died. The thought of him, of even someone impersonating him, caused my old wound and his mark to prickle, and that inescapable cold seeps into the room, followed by the whispers that Rezin is dead. I will not catch him at my door. I will not spot him outside my window. I will not see him at the trial. He died during the war. Not even the demon monarch can be resurrected. You've just heard Prosecution experiences a flurry of death threats amidst an increased number of reported demon sightings from Say I Sue Them Not by Kingsley Montevello. Tonight's episode was read by Pepper Holloway and was sponsored by Mackenzie's Dot-O-Matic. Relax and let the Dot-O-Matic do all your household chores. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Frederian Gazette and go to our website www.thefrederiangazette.com for episode extras. Join us next Wednesday at 5 p.m. for episode 7. Prosecution introduced list of war crimes committed by the Montevello administration during the Second Shadow War.